Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. And I'm smiling. It's 2025, and we're talking about Wes Anderson, and it's not John Ford after over a year and a half. And joining me is my friend and our fearless leader of the SPDM Crew Podcasting Network, Mike Hilty.
Jane, thanks for having me on. I too also echo those sentiments that I am looking forward to not talking about a John Ford film, even though I only had to do maybe, I think at most half a dozen. But you, on the other hand,
Did
oh,
80.
oh, buddy, that's a lot.
And yes, and this one is we're going to be focusing on the short film Bottle Rocket that put, our buddy Wes Anderson on the map. And this is an exciting kind of like jumping off point for his filmography. And let's see. Now, for those who haven't tuned in before, we have three segments. We do have coming attractions for January 3rd, and then we'll get into our feature film, Bottle Rocket, and then some recommendations. So there's not much coming out January 3rd because we have the holdover of Christmas and everything with its four wide releases. And then also, the two movies that are making more money than all of them that came out the weekend before with Mufasa. So basically, you have Mufasa, you have Sonic, you have Fire Inside, you have Nosferatu, a complete unknown, and Baby Girl all out in theaters. And The Damned is coming out, which I'm sure none of you have heard of, but is actually a creepy little film. But we're going to turn to Netflix because they have Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul. And Mike, why are you excited for Wallace and Gromit?
Because Wallace and Gromit are awesome.
They are.
That's why I am so excited to watch this with my daughters because
Oh,
they're they're not quite as excited about it as I am because I love Wallace and Gromit. I had a copy of Wallace and Gromit, The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, a long time ago, and I love it. That used to be a Halloween staple for us.
mm.
But I'm just looking forward to more Wallace and Gromit adventures.
I'm ready for that dastardly penguin to come back with a vengeance most foul. Uh, which I love Wallace and Gromit. I've been a fan of Aardman since I was a kid when I used to watch Chicken Run all the time because
Mhm.
I love me some Chicken Run. I was kind of late to the Wallace and Gromit game though, and I've watched all of their short films a couple of like I think it was 2 years ago, and absolutely fell in love with them. And then I've been a fan of the Were Rabbit as well. And this was just so exciting that this was coming out. And this is a perfect way to have this out for the first weekend of the new year. And it seems like Netflix is doing that because I'm also a huge Shaun the Sheep fan. And they had Farmageddon come out January 2020, and Farmageddon wound up being in my top five films of 2020. Farmageddon was an absolute delight, and I love it to pieces. I'm
Mhm.
my Shaun the Sheep, uh, the Shaun the Sheep movie. So DVD right over there. So we're ready for some Aardman. But let's get into our feature film, which is Bottle Rocket from 1993, directed by Wes Anderson. This was written by Wes Anderson and his buddy, Owen Wilson, starring Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson. And they planned to have established actors, but the Wilsons were cast due to budget restrictions. Um, so they couldn't afford to get more established actors, so he just got his buddies to pop up in the film. Boy, did that work out for all of them.
Yes, it
Um,
did.
and this was a huge hit at Sundance. And director James L. Brooks was the one that really wanted to make sure this got financed and turned into a feature film, which I will talk about on next week's episode. But this week we got this short film. And Mike, what were your thoughts?
Well, couple thoughts. One, it was very interesting to see a baby-faced Owen Wilson and Luke Wilson. They look
Yep.
super young in this. You see some of the quirkiness with the dialogue with Wes
Mhm,
Anderson. You even see some of the cinematic flair that he has, even this early on, with like
mhm,
really interesting establishing shots um and different things like that. So I was interested in this. I didn't realize it was going to be in black and white either,
yep,
when it
it's
first started
cheaper.
it. Yeah, because it was cheaper, and all of those things that you said specifically about the actors and how they they wanted to get more established people, but these two were less expensive. You can tell that they're newer to this.
Mhm,
And I mean, on one end, does it make for a better end product? Debatable. But one thing that you can tell is that this felt very voyeuristic in a way. Like, this
mhm.
is probably what a bank robbery or like whatever robbery scheme that they are pulling together. This is probably how the planning phase actually feels like a little bit.
Mhm.
So it felt very natural in that way. And I thought that was interesting.
It's interesting from so like you brought up one, it's black and white, and this probably feels the most real of all of Wes Anderson's films because generally you are watching our Earth, our existence. This is a very hyper realized, strange place that Wes Anderson stories take place in, and it's only progressively gotten more like we're definitely not watching like regular people in a regular existence. Like even like Rushmore, I think it's like at least still on some level. Yeah, it's symmetrical. But like you look like you're still watching like normal
It's,
people. But like
it's
by the time you get to like Asteroid City, you've left regular existence behind. But this feels very like authentic and very like grassroots kind of filmmaking, which you also do see some of those shots of like, them being followed around in that house as they're like rummaging around and stuff like that. It feels like a Wes Anderson experience. Narratively, this is very interesting because it's all like the tertiary like perimeter things around a heist
yeah.
because like they obviously couldn't like afford to do like bigger things, and it's very interesting seeing like a couple of friends like planning a heist and then dealing with the aftermath of a heist in that kind of way where it's not like, hey, this isn't like a really fleshed out kind of story, but I think the Wilson brothers are fun
Mhm.
enough to enjoy. And yes, I was watching the feature length Bottle Rocket this morning, and my wife came down. She's like, "Babies, oh Wilson, baby," and
They
like this
like
is even 3 years earlier than that. So
mhm.
it's interesting seeing them very green, but also still very like, oh wow, like Owen Wilson, and it's so funny because like Luke Wilson's just like, yeah, I'm I'm just like a normal dude. Um, and then like obviously you could tell Owen Wilson was gonna be like the bigger personality even from like this little short film. But it's one of those kinds of things where it's like it wouldn't surprise me if you told me this was Richard Linklater who
Yeah.
made this, which is interesting because they're both from Texas. They're both
Mhm.
Texans. They're like the faces of indie filmmaking from Texas are Richard
Mhm.
Linklater and Wes Anderson. And I think this has a little bit of that vibe. And it's before like now you can tell there's a humongous difference between their films. But like you have that little scale here. And it was just an enjoyable little ride. Getting to hear them interact with each other, banter back and forth. And obviously you can tell these two have chemistry together. It's not like they haven't known
And
each other
they're
since
kind
like
of kind of relatives, so
yeah.
they,
So
they they've they've developed that chemistry a little bit. And you're so right about the Owen Wilson part of this. Um, because even historically, ever since those two have kind of come on the scene, Owen Wilson has kind of been the one that's been a little bit more out there.
Yeah.
versus Luke Wilson, who kind of Luke Wilson's got some dramatic chops, but he's also got he's got a comedy bone in him, but he's not anywhere near as famous as Owen Wilson is. And I do want to give a shout out to the guy that plays Bob, Robert Musgrave, because
Yep.
he is he's the guy that's responsible for all the external stuff, not the internal
Mhm.
stuff, the external stuff that they have to worry about. I did find it funny, kind of similar to what you were talking about, that it felt a little first season of Game of Thrones, where they're riding into battle, and then Tyrion gets knocked out, and then all of a sudden they wake up and the battle's over. And
Yep.
that's kind of how I felt during this, where they're talking about, oh, this where we gotta we gotta make sure that we carefully execute on all these things from the robbery, and then a couple seconds later, it's like, wow, that was easier than I thought. I'm like, was it? Like, I don't know that.
Where'd the heist go?
Yeah.
Which, like, you can tell this is a treatment for, like, this is meant to be like trying, and that's what a lot of short films are, is trying to sell you on a concept and hopefully somebody picks it up and you can make it into a feature film. This reeks of that, but
Yeah.
it's still an enjoyable and fun ride to watch in
Oh yeah,
itself.
for sure. Yeah,
And
because I we talked a little bit about this beforehand, is that I unlike most people watch this in reverse order. I watched the feature length, and then I didn't even realize that there was a short film of this until like years down the road, and I never watched it. So this is my
mhm,
first time watching this. I was like, oh, okay, this is a good proof of concept of what Bottle Rocket eventually would become. And
yeah.
then, okay, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Mhm. And like, I'll obviously talk about this more next week, but like the feature length Bottle Rocket feels like a Wes Anderson movie. It's
Mhm.
just like there's so many of those pieces there, and there's so much more story and depth to it. But yeah, this is very much The Hobbit, where it's like Bilbo gets knocked out, and then somebody has to explain to him over 2 pages what happened at the Battle of the Five Armies. And then somebody thought it was a great idea to make a 2+ hour movie about 2 pages
Yeah.
of a children's book.
Uh-huh.
Warner Brothers. Um, but no, it's you could definitely tell that Owen Wilson obviously has a lot more charisma and
Mhm.
personality than Luke Wilson. Luke Wilson, I think, fits a very specific place where he plays a charming, nice guy, and you like him for that. And I think it works. And Owen Wilson has like he could be like that roguish kind of like jerk, which he really is in Bottle Rocket, like especially like the full version of this. And he's the one that would consistently be in a lot of Wes Anderson movies moving forward. Obviously Luke Wilson had like Royal Tenenbaums and stuff like that, but like almost it had Zoolander and Shanghai Noon and all those other movies that really set him off. And Luke Wilson had Idiocracy, which you need the most average man possible to be the lead in Idiocracy. Luke Wilson's got
I
it.
feel like Luke Wilson is the perfect person for
Yep.
something like that.
And he was really good in Skeleton Twins as like the straight man husband to oh, why am I blanking? It's Bill
Kristen
Hader and
Kristen Wiig. Kristen
Kristen
Wiig.
Wiig. Yeah,
Yeah.
and like he was perfect for that. And I think they each played their roles perfectly for this. And yeah, it's basically a trio, and you get like them hanging out afterwards. And the little like
The
with the guns, which is like
the
they
the
sound like toy
the
guns.
The gun scene was hilarious to me because it reminded me a little bit of that scene in the Grand Budapest Hotel where they're all just shooting their guns at each other.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, it's like, did Wes Anderson kind of take a look at that and was like, this is how I want to frame this gun shootout here? Um, So that part was interesting. Plus, the guy who sells them the gun and is telling them like why,
Character,
oh yeah, definitely
trucker
interesting.
hat, everything.
The Dr. Pepper shirt. Um,
Yep.
yeah, that was
Most
interesting.
memorable
And
character in the short film.
he that guy is a Wes Anderson character.
Yeah.
That's the type of person that you would probably see in a modern Wes Anderson movie.
No. Fun fact: you see him again, playing the same character.
Right.
Oh, well, this is on YouTube. It's a fun little thing to check out. It's only 13 minutes. So if you have the time, check it out. And then, come along this ride as we go through all of Wes Anderson. This is going to be taking us through, I think it's May. We're going to be chugging along here. About mid-May, this will be taking us. So it'll be a fun little ride. And then let's have some recommendations. So, Mike, what would you like to recommend? It seems like you have one for the holidays.
I do. So we spent Christmas just watching a bunch of movies. A lot of them were rewatches. I made my kids watch the A Muppet Christmas Carol for the first time, and after some resistance, because my kids are not very in tune with the Muppets, they finally by
Mhm.
the end were like, "Okay, I enjoy this a lot." So that's fun. But the new one that we watched, there was a couple on Netflix that were kind of newer, and we ended up watching That Christmas because my wife is from New Zealand, so Commonwealth, she felt a connection to it. But
Mhm.
this one, it's kind of an interesting interconnected story of just this town and all of these kids who, um, you know, a lot of them have known each other for a long time and just there's varying ages, but it's pretty much just Santa talking about, this town and these kids that, really are in need of just some good Christmas spirit. So
Mhm.
I like this. I thought Brian Cox as Santa Claus was inspired, but he didn't say fuck off once. So I didn't appreciate that one bit, but thought the kids were cute. I thought a lot of the storylines were cute. And just the message at the end
Mhm.
about just the town coming together and just like there's an event at the end that causes the whole town to rally around a certain
Yes.
thing. And I thought that that was cute. And what more could you ask for from an animated modern kids Christmas movie than for it to be cute? And
Mhm.
that's exactly what we got.
Yeah, this is a charming little film. I appreciated it. And it's right,
Yeah.
it's there on Netflix. It's like an hour and a half. It's not a
Yeah,
big investment. So enjoy for the holidays.
yeah,
There you
for
go.
sure.
So I really haven't seen a whole lot of new movies since I last recorded, but I am like I got to see this early a little bit and got some free swag, which I was super excited about, which was Nosferatu.
Ooh,
And this movie was everything I wanted it to be. It is dark, it is gothic, it is extremely detailed in every conceivable way. As always, Robert Eggers did his homework because he's a historian and got everything down to a T. Bill Skarsgård gives one of the most transformative performances I think anyone has given this whole entire year. If nobody told you he was in this movie, you would have no idea he was in this movie. The voice that he created is terrifying and
yeah,
so creepy and unnerving. The character design is very different than from like the original Nosferatu, looking like a rat and everything. But it was very inspired and interesting. Lily Rose Depp is great. The whole cast is great. Willem Dafoe's a lot of fun for sure. And this is haunting and unnerving and lustful and horny in a really creepy and strange way. Just like any good gothic vampire story should be. Um, this is up there as one of my favorite films from the year. So Robert
Very nice.
Eggers still killing it. And I've seen some people say it's boring, and I feel bad for those people. Um, Off my watch list, I've actually watched quite a few good ones this week. Some of them you'll be finding on the Wasteland watch list coming up because my wife watched them with me. So we got some episodes coming. But this one I watched on my own, and that's Bad Day at Black Rock. And
Ooh,
this is a neo-Western that takes place right after World War II, directed by John Sturges, who directed The Great Escape and The Magnificent Seven, starring Spencer Tracy and a whole bunch of great character actors, including a few character actors from The Dirty Dozen. Because you have Lee Marvin, you have Ernest Borgnine, and Robert Ryan all in this movie. And it's a mysterious one-armed man shows up in a small town on a train that hasn't stopped there in 2 weeks, and the whole entire town gets on edge because they have a secret, Mike. And this is a really intense, interesting, and intriguing Western thriller that I'm like, I just casually put this movie on and didn't expect to be blown away on like a Monday morning. I was off Monday and I'm just like, I did my movie roulette as I usually do and landed on this. I'm like, this blew me away. Absolutely fantastic. So would recommend. And then one of my movies I'd like to recommend. I hadn't watched this in a while. I don't think I watched this since I was saw it in a theater, but it's Jeff Nichols' Midnight Special.
ooh,
And I was a big fan of his stuff, like Mud, very American Gothic kind of like gritty thrillers, with McConaughey. This one is actually like a Spielbergian sci-fi mixed with that, as Michael Shannon plays the father of a child who has these crazy powers, who both the government and a cult are trying to get their hands on. And this has Joel Edgerton in it, Kirsten Dunst, Bill Camp, Sam Shepard, Adam Driver. It's just this is a film that I really wish made a bigger splash back in 2016, but I absolutely love this. Um and the crazy thing is the kid is Jaden Martell, aka the main kid from It.
really? Huh,
Yeah. So
nice.
I did not realize that when I watched this back in 2016, because like I'm like, oh, this kid's really good. And then obviously he's still acting now, popping up and all kinds of stuff. So, but those are my recommendations. And that's a wrap on Welcome to the Wasteland. Mike, thank you so much for coming on and joining me for my first Wes Anderson episode.
So excited that you asked me to help kick off this Wes Anderson era of your streaming channel. So looking forward to hearing what everyone else has to say about Wes Anderson and go from there. So appreciate you as always.
Absolutely. That'll be my calling card every time we do a Wes Anderson episode, and it'll make a lot of sense when I do my Fantastic Mr. Fox one. So there you go. But thank you, as always, for tuning in and supporting your Wasteland review.